patrol, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere. Watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. If you are listening in on spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, and on Revolution Radio, welcome to tonight's show as we broadcast out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin right here in the Great White North, live on this Thursday night, early Friday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we do this thing every night of the week as we want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, conspiratorial, extraterrestrial, and so much more. The guitar god himself, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, is the man behind our music. Go to our website, click on the Bumblefoot banner to give yourself a little taste test of our rock and roll around here. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Find us on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we say hi, how are you to everyone listening in on the Revolution Radio chat room on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. It's time to get that membership if you haven't got it yet. The SOR Space Travelers Club is open for business. $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While on our website, you can read our latest blogs, check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire, and if you have an interesting sighting or report that you want answered, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. If you've had an experience and you want it investigated, our researcher Mike Schmidt is waiting for you. Fill out a report. All of your information is 100% confidential. Remember, if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is the largest nonprofit online radio station going today. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. What is the role of the alternative media? Should it be for the people? Or is it merely another new and improved form of the National Enquirer? Well, that's a topic that can be debated heavily and probably will be tonight. The role of any media source is supposed to be the lawyer, eyes, and ears of the public, to keep those in charge in check with factual stories and reporting, unbiasedly. However, over the last number of years, we have seen a drastic change. The change has been in both the mainstream and alternative. The public were turning towards the alternative media for being their source of truth and fair and factual reporting. However, We've seen sources start scaring the hell out of people. I don't know what the hell my wife just put on my head. Oh my goodness. Thank you. I'm a little embarrassed right now. Anyways, I don't even know where I am. Everett, I apologize. Anyhow, let's get back into focus here. We have to take a look at the saturation of podcasting, video casting, Facebook Live, and the other sources of social media where the public is doing their own reporting. Is this good for people? Are these true sources of information? If not, how's the public supposed to know? The million-dollar question that needs to be answered. Everett Themer is a freelance writer for the Supernatural magazine. Recently, he did write a very flattering article on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you very much. Now, the reason why I mention that is because I really don't want anyone to go out there and think that we're doing this show to praise the growth of SOR comparatively to other shows. That's BS. We're not going to do that. That's not what this is about. Tonight is about the state of paranormal and alternative media. So let's get to it. Everett Themer from the Supernatural magazine, welcome to Spaced Out Radio. It's been a good opportunity to get to chat with you a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Besides my wife just scaring the living daylights out of me, which she has been doing, and, I'm doing okay. I don't like to be startled. I hate being startled. And, well,
then what are you doing in the paranormal?
I have no idea, man. I have no idea. You should have seen me light up my ghost in my yard last year when I went out during the Perseus meteor shower to try and find out what was going on. Maybe I could see something in the sky. And instead of seeing something in the sky, I see his ghost about 20 feet away from me right in front of the tree. And I watched him dissolve right in front of me. I jumped, and I literally gave him crap. I'm like, dude, you're not supposed to scare me. Come up and say hello anytime you want, but please don't startle me. That's the one thing I hate.
I think you're in the wrong field then, because I think we all spend a lot of time getting startled.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, my friend. And you know what? It's one of those things we can laugh about. We're still allowed to get a little pissed off about it, but that's okay. That's okay. So, I'm a big fan of your writing. I've read a number read a number of articles that you've written, and the one thing that I like about your style of journalism is you're kind of old school. You write it down the middle. And I think that is a lost art, Everett, especially with today's journalism and today's field of reporters, especially the younger ones who want to include themselves in stories. They want to make themselves part of the action, and that's not really what journalism is all about, is it?
No, not at all. I think I take my point of view, but I'm not skeptical of everybody who's had their experiences. I believe people are having the experiences. I'm skeptical, I think, more of how we're recording, what we're doing to process, to look at, and analyze these experiences.
Why do you take that tone, though? Because a lot of journalists today, they want the sensationalism. They want to make that blue sky bright blue with the sun shining like it's never shined before. Yet you go straight down the middle.
I think that's a big part of alternative media is people want to make themselves the story. And when you and I talked on the phone a while back before I did the article about you, I think I even mentioned to you, I make a horrible guest on podcasts. I don't have books to sell. I'm not promoting appearances. Pretty much every believer and most skeptics kind of dislike what I have to say because I've seen evidence that is absolutely phenomenal, and I will argue with skeptics to the death that there's something there. And I've seen evidence that is ridiculous or fake or just misinterpreted, and I'll argue with the believers, the investigators, that, in that direction, that it's nothing.
So when did you start writing? When did you decide that you wanted to start doing a little bit of journalism?
One day I just started going on these rants, and it wasn't even paranormal. I work in advertising and marketing, and I've written copy. I've written, the little stories on the back of the food box, that kind of thing. And one day I just went on this little rant about Facebook and sent it off to somebody as a joke. And pretty soon they kept asking for more and more. And I've just kind of fallen into it.
It's addicting. And
it is.
And you know what? The one thing that when I got my degree in broadcast journalism and then I spent 10 years in radio, the one thing I can say about journalism, whether you're writing, whether you're on television, or whether you're on the radio, it is an addicting format. And when it gets in your blood, it is something that is, and I'm going to use a horrible example here, but I've used this one before, so I'm going to stick with it because I believe it's quite accurate. It's like heroin. You need that fix. You need that microphone in front of you, or that keyboard and computer to type something out. You just need that fix. It's something that does not go away. And even though I retired from mainstream radio in 2007, I had no idea 7 years later that I was going to be starting up Spaced Out Radio. I had no idea. But I can tell you, in that 7 years in between, there are many, many times where I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back real, real bad. And it's the fun of it. It's the thrill of it. It's the fact that there is something new every time, isn't it, Everett?
Oh, exactly. If I haven't written anything in a day or two, it's whether I use it or not. If I haven't sat down and gone through the act, my wife will start to notice. She'll point out that I'm pacing in the kitchen with my eyes just kind of lost thinking about something, or I'm staring off in the distance paying no attention to what anybody's saying, and she knows that I'm thinking about something, putting something together in my head that I need to go and sit down and write.
I know the exact same feeling. It's the exact same way on my end as well. Before we go any farther, I do have to tell you, and my audience as well, because I mentioned it on last night's show, in my area this morning, Mike Schmidt and my good friend Tony Pacheco, we actually went searching for Bigfoot this morning. And we went to an area where Mike had found a track this past Saturday. And it was
that was the track you found, or he found while you were at the Paracon?
Exactly. And we literally almost drove right over top of it. It now looks like a little mud puddle where it is now, because it's been raining pretty heavily here recently. And so we started searching the bushes. And us three amateurs, because we're building a Sasquatch paranormal UFO team up here. We don't have a name yet, but we'll come up with something catchy, and, we'll put it all over the social media and tie it to the Space Out Radio website as well. But we actually went into the woods right near that track, and we came across an open area that was kind of surrounded by trees. Now, when I say an open area, this was maybe 25 feet around, and there was trees lying all around it. But we found what we believe is another print today.
Nice.
Yes, I'm kind of excited about it. We did some photographing of it, and because it's off the beaten track and off the main logging road that it was on, our vehicle was on, what we did was we actually stacked some rocks up, and we're going to go back there in a few days just to see if anything has happened to those rocks, if they've moved, if they've been shifted, or anything along those lines. Because right now, when you're in the wilderness up here, you want to be careful. We have rutting season for the deer and the moose, and there was a big pile of moose balls all over the place. We have bears in the area. The area where we are in, it hasn't seen grizzly bears in 25 years, 30 years. Well, there's been a grizzly bear photograph there recently. And, never mind the cougars, the wolves, the badgers, and probably my former mother-in-law in there somewhere. So it's a dangerous, dangerous place. So we got that, and we're pretty excited, because we didn't think we would find anything. And Mike's a real outdoorsman. Tony found it and said, "Hey guys, what's this?" And we went looking around, and sure enough, you could see the toe prints. You could see it was about 9-10 inches long, maybe 11 inches long, very wide. I put a picture up on Facebook, so if you're on my Facebook page, you can check it out. It was pretty cool to watch and to see and to experience. I never thought we would get something on our first time going out, but to get it so close to that other track that Mike found on Saturday, it was pretty damn exciting, my friend.
If it's really near where the other track is, that seems to suggest that there's definitely some activity there.
I think so.
Bigfoot is one of the things I've never had the opportunity to experience. And I hope to one day. My wife, where we live, is mostly woods and corn and soybean fields. My wife saw what would be compared to Dogman coming home one night, but I've never had the opportunity to see any kind of cryptid out in our woods.
I'll tell you, I am going to be focusing a lot on cryptids along with Mike, and we want to get into the UFO side. The paranormal side, it's fun, it's interesting, but it's not going to be our forte. We want to find out what the hell is up in our mountains, because there is so many sightings up here every single year that a lot of people don't talk about them. A lot of people don't report them. So we want to make sure that because we're local people doing this, that people have that comfort zone to actually go through with it and get that information out there. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully we're able to make things happen.
Yeah, all it takes is one clump of hair, one pile of scat, something, somewhere somebody has to find just that right little piece of evidence. And that opens up the door and changes the game in terms of any of the cryptids.
Absolutely. A Trip in the Space Out Radio chat room is asking, Dave, was it the same size print? Was it a left or a right foot? It looked like a right foot to me. Mike can probably answer that a little bit more. He's more experienced in the wilderness. I'm a desk job kind of guy, man. So to be out there in the woods, I'm glad I have someone like Mike out there with me, and Tony, who's lived in the area pretty much his entire life, because I would be lost as hell out there. It's amazing. We're only 150, 200 feet into the forest, and it's amazing. You can't even see the road. That's how thick the trees are in the area. You're like disappeared, man. It's a different world out there.
That is cool. So someday I'm going to get up to Vancouver. I know that there's a lot of TV production up there, and some people I know are working on some different things up there, but that whole area is a hotbed of almost everything lately.
I agree, and Mike just confirmed in the chat room that it was a right print. So it's pretty exciting. Anyways, enough about what I did today, because I'm tired. After that, we ended up going up to the mountain, grabbing some firewood, and I chopped wood for about 2 hours this afternoon and was literally looking like a zombie up until about an hour and a half ago, until it's time to get ready, pull the big boy socks up and get ready for a little SOR action. So let's get into the reason why you are here. We're going to focus a little bit later on, Everett, because we got you for the 3 hours. We're going to focus a little bit later on the alternative media. But I am more interested in getting your point as someone who writes for Supernatural Magazine. Do you find, when you look around as a listener, as a viewer, as a writer, that there is just too much going on right now, or do you believe that there's not enough?
I think a little of both. It's kind of ironic that we're talking the night after Ghost Hunters ended their run on the Sci-Fi Channel. I think that there are a lot of shows out there. I think some are being missed that should be seen and should be listened to. but I think that there's a lot of stuff out there that is essentially just people wanting to be the star of their own show. The paranormal is kind of the last field, or one of the last fields, where you can claim to be an expert and really not have any kind of background in it. So it's very easy if you have a computer and a phone and a camera, you're up and running for whatever you want to do. And there are a lot of people out there doing that.
So when you look at the alternative media and the paranormal media today, we have umpteen thousand radio shows, podcasts. We have literally thousands of YouTube channels that are dedicated to ghosts, to Dogman, to Bigfoot, to spirituality, to UFOs, extraterrestrials, conspiracies. We now have, I can't go down my feed today because when I was prepping for this show earlier, I was looking all over my Facebook. I can't get through my feed now without seeing someone posting on Facebook Live, whether it's the most useless thing I've ever seen or whether it's a live ghost hunt. It is everywhere. And I realize that is the purpose of social media, especially in today's 24/7 world. But on the flip side, there has to be some happy medium as to what is enough, what is good, what is bad. Let me hear your thoughts.
Well, in terms of Facebook Live, okay, I understand it. I get the point. It does have some valid uses. But mostly, people just make a spectacle on it. I don't see much of a point. If you have to, Facebook Live your ghost hunt, are you more interested, again, in being the star of the show? Or are you really trying to move the field forward? There was a time when people would videotape things and analyze it and then present it, whether they just put it on their website or wrote a little bit about it. They would look at it and decide what they had. Now, everybody's just doing it live and essentially making a spectacle. I think it hurts the field in the long run.
That's interesting. Why do you think it hurts the field in the long run?
Because ghost hunting, paranormal investigations, really, it's very boring. I think you would agree that it's almost always, 4 or 5 hours of sitting in the dark and looking and waiting and recording, your thoughts and feelings, followed by 5 minutes of sometimes insanity, sometimes terror, sometimes just weird things going on. If you're going to Facebook Live, what are you really looking for? What are you expecting that kind of show from the paranormal in a few minutes? People aren't going to want to sit there for 8 hours and watch a Facebook Live feed.
I agree. And you know what? I think the whole purpose that I see that Facebook Live should be doing is, I know a lot of people, and I'll use Joseph Aquilino here from the Joey Giggles show, WIRN network. He'll be on with us on the round table tomorrow night. But I look at what he does. He uses it a couple of times a day to promote his shows. It's all about what he is doing. But when I hear people, and I saw one today, a gentleman lying in bed telling me why I should vote for Trump and not Hillary, and, I think he had a little bit of a stain on his T-shirt, and the lights were off, you could barely see him, and you sit there and you think, why am I seeing this? Why am I wasting my time? It has exploded, and I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that yet. If it's even worth my time or anybody's time to get caught up in that. But the more people are distrusting of the mainstream media, Everett, could it be that they are taking their own views as news now?
They could be, but you have to look at these people who are Facebooking or Facebook Live, their own political views, their own views. Most of the things I've seen on Facebook Live have been voyeuristic. Sometimes traffic, sometimes a shooting here in Chicago, sometimes people who just get drunk and start rambling about things. If somebody is going to get on there and begin to talk about Trump or Hillary or any of these topics that you should have some knowledge of before you start talking about them, why trust them any more than the mainstream media? If he's just a stranger or somebody who pops up on your news feed or even a Facebook friend, if you don't know that much about him, what gives him the credibility, the credentials to make his thoughts and opinions and sometimes facts that are pulled out of the air or real, what makes him more of an authority than anybody else?
The problem that I see in this, Everett, and maybe you do too, and if not, I would like to hear your opinion, is people are now taking opinion and their opinions and other opinions as fact. And there is no fact anymore. People aren't researching anymore. They're taking what they believe and they are running that in a public forum as fact. And to me, that's dangerous. I don't even do that on this show.
I completely agree. And you see it in the paranormal, you see it in the political, you see it all across, the full spectrum of journalism, that people, like you said, are promoting their opinions as fact. And that's dangerous because that encourages a lot of people to not actually research what they think they're learning.
So, where do you think these opinions are coming from? Is it frustration? Is it anger? Is it fear? Tell me where you think it's coming from.
I think it's a little of all of those. I think, at least here in the U.S., with, our political circus right now, there are a lot of people frustrated with a lot of different things. And then you have somebody like Trump who kind of makes up his facts as he goes along. The people that kind of follow him, that believe his rhetoric, they all of a sudden are empowered to do the same thing. And in a world where everybody has a voice and everybody has the ability to have their voice heard, sometimes people should just be quiet and listen.
But social media isn't about that now. Before there was Facebook Live, we'd get long diatribes, and everybody has that friend on social media who would post that they are at the coffee shop and this is what they are ordering. Then right after that, they'd go out and grab some lunch, and by the way, this is a picture of my lunch that I'm eating. Anybody else out there, show of hands, happy that they are not seeing a meal photographed that a person is about to eat every 5 minutes on your Facebook feed? Let's get real here. And now it's all switched over to the Facebook Live because apparently that's not good enough anymore. We now need to see people giving their opinions, taking us driving. I watched someone today who was on Facebook Live who was going for a walk to get some exercise. The camera was pointed at the road the entire time. It's unbelievable.
And you have time in your schedule to sit there and watch that?
I got intrigued. Honestly, it pisses me off so much. It's like when you hear that one song that you can't stand, but every time you hear it, you can't turn the damn thing off. You know what I'm saying? Because you hate it so much.
Yeah, I completely understand that one.
Mm-hmm. So that is what I am trying to get at here, is we are way too much into this, and it's scary. As a journalist, and I'll throw you into that category, and I'm sure you'll agree, it is scary, the amount of people who are not even fact-checking and yet creating their own live journalism. And you can't blame them, because when you look at the mainstream media, doesn't matter if it's in Canada or the U.S. or anywhere in the world right now that has quality media coverage, Okay? You can't trust the mainstream to give you the unbiased story anymore. You now can't trust the alternative media in doing that. And we'll get back into that a little bit later in the show. So I guess the question is, are people going vigilante with journalism?
I think some are, but I also think that it's the public's responsibility and right to look at something and go, you know what, this is wrong. This person's views I don't agree with, and I'm not going to watch them. And when that happens, if somebody's not getting any views on their Facebook Live and they're not getting any comments, eventually I would hope that they would get tired of doing it. If not, you know, they're going to become the new Fringe, the new Alex Jones, the new conspiracy theory, let's make the story about me kind of people.
So in the end, who wins? Who loses?
I think each person decides if they win or lose. We can't put the responsibility entirely on journalism to educate us. We have to look at all sides, you know, look at different sources, look at different ideas. If 5 sources are saying that candidate A is an idiot, and there's 2 that are saying he's the greatest thing in the world, you need to look at the point of view of those different sources and see what you really believe. I can't decide what somebody's going to believe. I can try and persuade somebody. I can try and make somebody see my point of view. But if they're not going to, it's not worth my time to try and force them to see it, because then I'll be on Facebook Live yelling at everybody, telling them my view is right and I'm the story all of a sudden.
But that's the problem. People think that they have to be a part of the story because we see journalists now becoming part of the story, whereas the rule of thumb in any journalism class, doesn't matter what university or technical school you go to, one of the first rules of thumbs they tell you in journalism school is do not become a part of the story. That is not your job. Your job is to relay the facts. And if something happens, let's say you're covering a riot, and all of a sudden you get pepper sprayed because you're in that situation, well, of course you have to report on that, okay? Or, you know, we saw during the Rodney King riots where literally journalists were doing their reports from L.A. and people would run up to them and punch ladies, women, cameramen in the face. We saw that.
Yeah.
Okay? And that brings a journalist into the story. But 9 times out of 10, we're not supposed to be doing that. And here we are.
Well, I think there's a difference between being brought into the story and making the story about you. When somebody's on Facebook Live or even some blogs and different other outlets, you can be, you know, you can make yourself part of the story when you shouldn't be. And I think people want, there's always that certain little part of everybody that they want to be famous. They want the attention. They want everybody to know that they're just a little bit smarter than everybody else. And that giving them an outlet such as Facebook Live, it gives them that outlet or I should say the opportunity to try and prove their point.
Well, let's switch gears here. You're someone who does a lot of research for your show. I mean, your blog, your piece of writing. When you are studying the media today, and let's get into podcasting here, you hear and you have listened to a lot of radio shows that are out there.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what makes a good radio show?
I think a host that can push the story along without getting in the way of the story somebody who can tell it and talk about it or interview guests without making themselves self-important. You can hear a host when you can kind of tell that they're trying to make it about them. It's not the guests, it's not the story. It's they have a show, and they kind of give off an air of, I'm a little smarter than everybody else. I want somebody, I like to listen to people who can just push a story along, let the guest talk, and not turn it into themselves or make it about them. Or you've heard those hosts that they have an experience that relates to everything that their guests say. They have a story that's either equally or more fascinating than what their guests are saying, and pretty soon they're just telling their stories.
So when you listen to them, and I think this is important, when you are shuffling through Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker, Mixler, anything on Facebook that you see where you can grab a stream, how many shows a week are you listening to?
Probably, I don't always listen to full shows, but I'm probably going through 50 different shows a week. A little less now because my hours here are, I'm tied up usually from about 11 at night to 2 in the morning listening to you, which used to be my work time. But I
apologize about that.
Oh, that's okay. I've found other times to do it. I probably shuffle through probably 50 different. I'll go back and revisit different shows and listen to somebody every 6 months or so, and just see if they're improving, if they're changing, what their opinions are, that kind of thing.
So as someone who is putting that amount of time into it, and I don't know how you do it, but then again, people are saying, Dave, we don't know how the hell you do this every night of the week.
Yeah.
You make time for it. I understand that. What are you looking for when you are on there?
If I'm looking at paranormal radio, I'm looking for something original, something different. There are a ton of shows out there or podcasts that they're just retelling the same ghost story with different people. Sometimes, it might be a family in their haunted house. It might be a haunted business. It might be a run-in they had in their car with a ghost on the road. But they're really just retelling the same story with different people.
Do you believe then that the hosts are trying to do this maybe for their own healing, or trying to figure out their problem or their situation?
No, I think a lot of it is, again, this is one of the fields you can get into and appear to be an authority without really having any kind of background or even experience in it. If you have a camera and a microphone and a phone and an internet connection, you're on your way to hosting something. And I think there are a lot of people out there that want the attention. And if they try and do it about politics, they have to know something about politics. If they want to do it, about cooking or whatever sports, they have to know facts and figures and, different methodologies, where with the paranormal, you can get, find some people that have some ghost stories, get them to tell them on your show, and pretty soon you've got a show.
And you know what? You brought up sports there, and as a former sports reporter, I have to tell you this. I tried listening to a couple of sports podcasts out there. I can't do it.
I can't.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I've been in the trenches, okay? I was the dude, if you're seeing the big scrum in front of the athlete, the star player, and you see all those microphones in front, I was the guy who had my hand in there asking the tough questions, asking, trying to get through that cliche for that one sound bite that is going to make it go for the night. And I literally loved that job. And when I sit here as a listener, and we're focusing on sports here for a minute, and I listen to these people who don't have a press pass, who don't have insider information, who don't have the ability to go to games because they are unaffordable, it bugs me. Because now, once again, it gets back to that whole opinion thing rather than fact. And if you want to be taken seriously, you have to be able to bring fact to the table instead of rumor, cliche, what you read out of the paper, because you're not doing your job.
Well, I think most of the sports podcasts, these people don't have access to the insiders, so to speak, that a mainstream sports journalist like you would have. You're getting, as a mainstream journalist in sports, you're getting little tips and tidbits from people, even if you don't share them all the time and right away. You know what's going on. Some of these people that I've listened to, we have the Cubs in the World Series right now, which is apparently a big thing. I don't watch them because I haven't seen them win a game in about 10 years. And every time I turn on the TV, they lose. So I'm intentionally not paying attention to any sports right now. But there are a lot of people out there, who don't have any inside information or even stats and figures. They're not up on that kind of thing that a sports reporter should be and would be if they were a professional sports reporter.
And I understand they don't have the credentials, they don't have the press passes, they don't have the contacts, the phone numbers to call someone up and see how things are going, or is that trade going to happen, or who's winning or losing. And I understand there's a lot of passionate people out there, whether it's sports, whether it's ghost hunters, whether it's ufologists. But at some point, it's not about the release, it has to be about the knowledge. And that's where I am getting baffled personally. How do you feel about that?
In terms of the knowledge that people are claiming to have or acting like they have?
Exactly.
There's a lot of people out there who are more clueless than I am. And I will tell you, I'm barely a highly functioning idiot. There are a lot of people out there who just, and it goes back to what you said about promoting opinion as fact. It's really easy for somebody to make some statements and promote them as fact when they can't be backed up. And if they are the type of person that wants to be the center of attention and maybe, make that claim that, they're important because they host this podcast or whatever, it gets really easy to get caught up in your own ego and begin to believe your own hype.
What about the dilution of the audience? Because one of the things when I got into this, a lot of people told me was if you get 300-400 people listening to your show, you have a very, very popular show. And here I am, when I worked in Vancouver, we would have 400,000 people a day listening to us. And if you think of Vancouver's population of being just a hair under 2 million, that's a pretty healthy chunk of the audience. And to hear 300-400 people a day, and that's what makes a successful show, I was baffled by that. Why do you think that would make a successful radio show?
I don't think it does make a successful radio show. I think that eventually, we're kind of in a little bit of a switch right now, I think, in terms of media. Destination America is bringing on more paranormal programming. But really, if you look at Sci-Fi, has dropped pretty much all of their paranormal programming. The History Channel, TLC, all those have kind of stopped their different upstarts and their specials and their series. I think that as that kind of fades away, I think there are going to be a lot of paranormal podcasters and radio hosts that get tired of only broadcasting to a few hundred people. I mean, I think that they're expecting more without having to put in the time, the effort, and the dedication to get quality. And I think that after a while, and it might take a year or two or maybe a little more, these different podcasts are going to begin to drop off and go their own way and disappear. And then the audience, for the ones that have the dedication, the skills, I think their audiences will begin to grow. I mean, that's the one thing that the paranormal media doesn't really have in it is journalism. It's all, this is what we've got. You can say that there's all this ego in it and that everybody wants to say their evidence is the best, their methodology is the best. Eventually, as these shows drop off and disappear, I think you're going to see the really good ones begin to really flourish.
And I agree with you on that, because the one thing that I have noticed since doing this show is getting the listener these days to make an emotional commitment to the show. We are lucky. We have some brilliant people listening to our show, taking part in our chat rooms on a nightly basis. And I know it's not just them, but there's, according to the recent numbers, about 1,500 an episode listening here. And that includes our iTunes downloads. Okay, so when I sit there and I look at the people and the comments they make, the questions they ask, they've made an emotional commitment to this show. But considering that people want what they want right here, right now, and they're not waiting for it, it is so hard to get people to make that commitment, because in this 24-hour selfish society that we live in, what I have noticed is people are no longer looking for the quality of programming. Quality doesn't seem to mean anything. They're looking for what suits them the best. And therefore, rarely do you get an emotional commitment out of somebody to a radio show anymore. What do you think about that?
I, to an extent, would disagree, because I found your show in just the way we were talking about. It popped up on a news feed. I hadn't heard of it. I clicked on it, and I will tell you, I think I listened live the first night, and then over the next couple days, I downloaded a couple of podcasts, and then I listened again live for a few days, and I went back and forth, and pretty soon it became habit. I mean, I would sit down to start to work, whether it would be writing or working on other projects, and my phone would just tune to you at 11 o'clock my time. And that only took, I don't know, about a week, 2 weeks maybe, where all of a sudden I realized that I was there. I had made that commitment without even realizing it. But I think you bring, and not to overly compliment you or anything, but you are one of the few people in the paranormal that actually has a background in journalism. There are, we've talked about all these different podcasts and radio shows, and most of the people doing these things don't have a journalism background. And as soon as you turn on your show, you can feel and hear and sense the difference that there's journalism going on. It's not just telling a story.
Let's get to a question from Gail here in the SOR Space Traveler. She is asking, Everett, Don't you think all those shows with their unskilled hosts and no audience will eventually fall by the wayside, and those orphan listeners will have to find a home?
Oh, I completely agree. I think we had covered that. I think eventually, I don't know how long it's going to take. Part of that is it's so cheap to do. It kind of depends on the ego of the host and how long they're willing to do their show with, few listeners. But I do think that eventually a lot of them will drop off to the wayside.
But the one thing I have noticed is the minute one drops off, there's 2 or 3 or 4 that pick right up. It's like Disney's Fantasia. You get rid of one, all of a sudden there's 10 more. And it's a tough business to try and compete in that.
Yeah, and I think that's where, as long as somebody really puts in the effort and takes the time to do their research and treats it as real journalism or, real media, as opposed to, I'm doing this out of my basement because I can, I think that there will be shows that will become incredibly popular. I think a lot of these little ones, it's kind of a fad right now. In fact, I think I had even entertained the idea of doing a podcast with some other people. We were going to look at the paranormal a little bit differently, and we started researching what we were interested in doing, and we found that there were I think we stopped counting after about 20 shows that were doing almost exactly what we wanted to do. So we decided not to do it. Hopefully some of those other shows will fall to the side, and then there'll be fewer, and that'll leave, a larger audience for other shows to grab. And as long as somebody is doing quality shows, doing good journalism, approaching the topics, there's a fine line between approaching some of these topics as a alternative kind of news source and approaching it as a mainstream. If you can balance that, if somebody can balance that, I think they will be incredibly successful.
So when you look at things in what makes a successful show comparatively to what makes someone who is just giving an opinion on there, what topics do you feel are overdone?
The big one I would say that's overdone is there are a lot of shows out there, and I see them on my Facebook news feed and get other little updates about them. There are shows out there who just want your ghost story. They just want to hear what you have to say, which it sounds good. It sounds like, they're trying to be accepting and open, but when there's 200 of them or 300 of them and everybody's out there telling their story, it gets repetitive. I mean, it's just over and over the same thing. And I think people will get to be maybe a little burned out on just hearing the ghost stories over and over. I think people who are looking at paranormal media want answers. They want to either learn how to get the answers for themselves. They want to see real investigative techniques. They don't necessarily want all the drama and sideshows. They want to learn and not just repeatedly hear the same thing.
What about the orphan listeners out there? And I understand with where you're going. They don't want to hear the same thing, and they have moved on. But there's a lot of orphan listeners out there, and I'm going to call it out, the Art Bell crowd. He snafu'd with Coast to Coast. He snafu'd on Sirius XM. He snafu'd on internet. And there's a lot of people upset with that who are now so jaded because they literally grew up with Art Bell, much like I did, that they are not even giving other shows an opportunity because they feel that it's way too copycat.
I think in time, people will return to the field, to the media. I can understand how they would feel that way. I mean, I don't think you want me to state my really real opinion of what happened with the whole Art Bell situation. And I can see why people are jaded. But I think that the people out there that are really interested, that have a genuine interest in the paranormal, they may be a little upset with Art Bell. I think a lot of people are. And I think that eventually they will begin to come back. I think they'll start to find, hopefully, they'll find the quality shows and not come back into it and listen to just random podcasts or some of the lower quality stuff, because, you know, that's going to be disappointing when your history is, you know, some of these other shows. I think they will come back.
Where, though? Because what I have noticed is if they are coming back, they are going back to familiar territory at this same time zone. At the same time that they broadcast. But we're going to get into that, Everett, right after the break here, because we are going to step away here momentarily. Everett Themer is our guest tonight. He is a writer from Supernatural Magazine. He really, really studies the field of paranormal media, alternative media, and we're going to continue with the radio talk right after this. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. It's good to have you along for the ride. And you know, I can honestly say, after chopping wood for 2 hours, finding Bigfoot for a couple of hours, I thought I would be tired tonight. I almost passed out, but I made it. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Hour number 2 up next.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us. From radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. If you're listening in on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set another one of his impossible passwords for the SOR space travelers. Diascuist. Diascuist. Nobody in their right mind actually uses that word in a sentence. But Diascuist is the password. We thank Bill Cardwell each and every night for setting a password, although the other night he missed and I had to set the password for him. But if you're an SOR space traveler, you know what to do with it. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can hook up with the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. You can also read up on your latest news with the SOR Space Wire. by our news director, Eric Markham. Read up on our blogs. Listen to some Bumblefoot. The guitar god himself is the official music of this show. And if you've had a weird experience you can't explain, you want someone to look into it, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Investigator Mike Schmidt is waiting to investigate for you. Tonight we are talking about the paranormal and alternative media. I think it's an important topic that isn't discussed enough. Where do you turn to as a listener for the truth in what is going on? Can any journalist be trusted these days? Everett Thiemer from Supernatural Magazine is with us. Everett, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Right before the break, we were talking about podcasting, what's too much, what are we hearing too much of, what's the flavor of the day. At what point as a listener, if you're an orphan listener, do you say enough is enough, that you've given up on the whole topic or the genre?
Well, I think, I think the people who have a genuine interest in it will find, their way back. I think mostly a lot of these shows and podcasts will disappear eventually, though, and you're right, they do get replaced. But I think that the good ones will rise up and their audience will grow. It's just a matter of having, the journalistic background, the desire to be in the paranormal, and the desire to do a show that will make a show last and survive and grow. And that's, one of the things I wanted to ask you. The other night, you had the guys from Forest Moon on, and somebody had asked about, what was their scariest or most terrifying experience. And everybody seemed to kind of always go back to, and I think it's pretty much true throughout the field, something in their youth, something when they were a kid happened, and that's kind of what's pushed them into this field. When you were doing radio in Vancouver, did you ever have an inkling or an idea that you were going to end up doing a paranormal radio show? An experience as a child, or what pushed you into the field?
I had no clue, and I've never been asked that. I had no clue that this is the direction it was going to take. When I stepped out of radio, my whole goal was to host a sports talk show, because I, at that time, was an absolute sportsaholic. Even when I got home, didn't matter what time of the day it was, even when I got home, I would turn the sports on. Local sports channels up here in Canada, just to see if I missed anything, or maybe someone reported something differently than I did, or something along those lines, because I was addicted to my job. Yes, I will admit, there were a lot of nights that I worked where literally we would be, sitting down, relaxing, listening to Coast to Coast AM in our own newsroom that at a different station that was playing that, because we wanted to hear the weird topics of the night. And we always thought it would be kind of cool to do a show like that, but it was never more than just that comment. And it wasn't until I started having my own experiences starting in 2011 that really changed my mind. And I have to be honest with you, and I don't know if any of my newer listeners actually know this about me. Previous to 2014, October 2nd, 2014, a gentleman named Johnny Enoch, who I am very close to, he is a mentor of mine, said, "Dave, we need to get you back on the radio." I had never heard of online radio. I knew of satellite radio, and of course I knew of mainstream radio. I never knew there was this whole other genre where people were broadcasting this type of information. So John's like, "We got to get you back on the radio." I'm like, well, you just can't walk into a radio station and say, "I want to do a show." It doesn't work that way. And he's like, "No, we're going to broadcast it online." I said, "How?" I don't have a studio. I don't have a microphone anymore. I don't have anything. He goes, don't worry about it. He goes, there's these online programs that you could get. And I'll tell you right now, this was October 2nd. I agreed to do it. I said, this is what is going to be done on October 10th. He's like, great, let's do it. We started setting up the show on October 15th, and November 30th, we started broadcasting live of 2014. And that's literally how it worked. No clue that this entire genre existed at that time.
Wow. That's cool, and it's unusual. I mean, I've noticed, and maybe that's why you're able to kind of keep out of the stories, so to speak, and not make yourself a part of it. I've noticed, so many people claim that or state that, they've had these paranormal experiences when they were 5 or 6 and 7, and then all of a sudden they're drawn to it, and they've been sort of involved in it their whole life, and now they have an outlet to broadcast, even when they shouldn't be.
And the one thing, when John and I were setting up this show, the one thing I was extremely strict on was that we needed to bring journalistic integrity to this. And I wasn't going to do it for anything less. He's like, well, why don't you do a 1-hour show once a week? I said, because that's not who I am. That's not what I'm about. I said, if we're going to do this, let's go hard. Let's go really hard. Let's do it 7 days a week, and eventually, as everything falls into place, I will find a weekend host who will come on in, and literally 4.5 weeks later, I met James Tyson. We met for lunch, and I said, this is my vision, this is my goal. I have a weekend host job open. Would you like it? And he jumped all over it. And that's how we have maintained. So for the first 6 weeks, 7 weeks of this program, I was literally doing the show 7 nights a week, starting at 10 p.m. We didn't start the 3 hours until earlier this year.
That is a tight production schedule.
It really made for zero social life, I can tell you that.
And your family was okay with that?
My best friend, who happens to be my wife, was the one pushing me to do it. And I'll tell you another story, Everett, and my audience has heard this if they've been around for a while. I suffer from depression and anxiety. I make no bones about that. Talking about it helps me heal. And I was on some pretty good meds with it, and I was able to focus so much energy, positive energy, and I was getting so much positive out of this show that I didn't even realize in January of 2015 I had run out of medication. And I have not been on medication since January 2015. I haven't needed it.
That's good.
Yes. I'm very happy about that.
Do you think that, and this might sound like a stupid question, but do you think that hosting a paranormal show has opened you to having more paranormal experiences, or do you think it's just kind of opened your eyes to the paranormal media world, to other people?
You know what? I have had a few people in my old newsroom, because I use a pseudonym from my real name that I used on the radio in Vancouver. I have had a few people in my old newsroom actually tune into this show and even play this show while they are working in the newsroom of my old station. So the word is traveling that I am doing this. However, I'm sure there's a few people who say, well, that guy's just screwed up anyways, and they're just rolling their eyes at it. They're not journalism. They're just talking to a bunch of quacks or whatever. That's the way the mainstream likes to think. But there's a lot of people who say, hey, man, I'm really glad you're doing this. I'm really glad to hear that you're building this show from the ground up, and it sounds great. It sounds professional. It sounds like you've been doing it forever, and you know, it's great to hear. But to get to your question about my own experiences, believe it or not, since I started this show, the tap has almost run dry on my own experiences, comparatively to what it was from 2011 up until I started this show in 2014.
Huh.
And I got to tell you, I'm a little pissed off at that. I get into the field, and all of a sudden my experiences kind of tighten right up. Don't like it. Don't like it a bit, man.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised by that answer, because I would think that it would open the floodgates of paranormal wanting to communicate with you, so to speak.
Well, we have had our weird and strange experiences here. I'm not going to lie about that. But on the flip side, you know, they're so far and few between now. I think it's rather interesting that we really, really don't have a lot going on in the house anymore. We don't have a lot going on around. You know, I'm now having to search it out, like a lot of investigators, like going out and looking for Sasquatch this morning. That is what I'm having to do. It's like I'm trying to have to force feed myself to get some sort of interaction with something strange or weird.
Huh. Now, I know you had said that you lived in a haunted house at one point. And I've heard you mention it on the air, and I've always wanted to know, when you moved in there, what was it like? What, did you know right away? Was it something that kind of creeped up on you? Was it something that you just kind of figured out over time? Or, you know, did you end up running out of there screaming with blood dripping down the walls?
No, we learned it over time. And the funny part about it is, our haunted house that we lived in was very much a weird place. Like, I'd never really understood what feeling energy was. You know, if I would go back to that place now, I could tell you there's weird juju there. But it was actually a duplex. We had moved from Vancouver Island back to the mainland. And our best friends who lived on the other half said, hey, we have a vacant part on our duplex. Why don't you guys see if you can rent that? And that way we could share babysitting. We could hang out all the time, because we were already hanging out all the time. So we thought, yeah, let's do that. My friend's side, nothing happened. Nothing strange. Nothing weird. On our side, I still don't know where all my teaspoons and drinking glasses went. Knocking on the walls, scratching on the walls, the little girl playing the piano, the little girl I saw, voices coming from the toy room. You know, I remember one time my daughter was over at Grandma and Grandpa's house for night, and she had a squeaky door on her bedroom, and all of a sudden we hear her door open and the pitter-patter of little feet running down the hallway. And my wife and I at the time could not afford a good bed. So we had this hand-me-down bed that was, although it was extremely comfortable, it was extremely squeaky. And you would hear the child, this ghost child, jumping on our bed like it's a trampoline, like kids do. And our friends would be like, are you two? And we'd be like, no, we're not. We're sitting on the couch watching a movie. And at that point, you became used to it, because there was nothing malevolent about it. There was nothing wrong with the experiences. You just kind of notice things. You know, sitting down for dinner, and all of a sudden the cat comes booting down the stairs and is standing on its back legs, patting something in the air, and you're watching this because it's only like 5 feet in front of you, and there's nothing in the air. It's not a moth. It's not a fly. It's nothing. You know, weird things like that. It just happened. And, you know, I don't know what it was about that place, but there was some strange happenings there. That's for sure.
And I can understand. And that's one of the things that makes me question a lot of, not so much the investigative shows, but these docudrama, entertainment shows, because my wife and I lived in a haunted apartment, and it was very similar to your experiences. It was a little girl. I don't know why so many hauntings are a little girl, but it was never, there were only a couple of times where it was out and out scary, but it was very quiet and creepy, kind of, or you could just always feel that this was there, or you could always see that there was somebody walking through the hallway, but it was never this terrifying, let's call a television crew and make a story of this kind of material.
So what made you start to want to write on it?
Questions. I love to ask questions. I had my first paranormal experience, which literally made me pee my pants, when I was probably about 5 or 6. And ironically, I'm standing right now about 500 feet away from where it happened. This white figure just came out from behind this tree in the dark as my dad and I were walking through the woods to go check on a fire. And this figure stepped out from behind the tree and stepped right back out. And I was young, and nobody really told me anything. But I had found out years later that when I saw this figure on the property, a few properties down from us, there was a guy who had committed suicide. Well, they said it was suicide in his truck, just sitting. At the time I saw this figure, that truck with that gentleman in it was over probably about 500 feet away from the tree. And I found that out probably 15, 20 years later.
It's amazing how it all seems to correlate into one. Gail has a question here. Gail is asking, she says, Dave, you are an experiencer on many fronts, so you know it's all true, but maybe that was to enhance your host broadcasting skills as opposed to being a continual experiencer. Your focus is more on broadcasting and being able to discern the real from the fake. And I think there's some truth there. But I can tell you this, it's falling back on the journalistic side of trying to remain impartial and unbiased towards what is going on. And that is why when we set up this show and we started saying our motto is we believe everybody, it's because I haven't stepped in your shoes, Everett. I haven't stepped in Gail's shoes. I haven't stepped in Mike's shoes or Daryl's shoes or Elizabeth or Bill's shoes. It just seems to happen that way. So how can I sit there and tell these people point blank my opinion if I haven't understood what they've gone through? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And there's too much of that out there.
Well, I think, ironically, the skeptics, and I label myself a skeptic, even though there's no logical reason why I should. I don't know why I do, but I look at things and ask a lot of questions, and I'm not always happy with the answers I get. But the people who make a career out of calling themselves skeptics, they seem to shut down every experience that anybody ever has. You could put them in the same room with a ghost and an alien, and they would come up with some sort of excuse for what's going on. And I find that funny when a lot of these skeptics and skeptic magazines and skeptic associations, they all claim that they come at these things with an open mind. But really, their mind is closed before they even hear of anybody's experience.
Absolutely. So getting back into the whole podcasting thing, because that is kind of the topic that we've kind of run away from. So we're going to circle it all back now. When you are listening to the 50 shows a week that you listen to, in your opinion, what makes a good host compared to one that maybe struggles behind a microphone?
I think somebody who understands broadcasting, understands journalism. You can listen to, and I'm doing it now as I'm forming thoughts, you can listen to a lot of podcasts and hear a lot of people struggle over their words, struggle over their thoughts. There's a lot of dead air, and it happens to everybody. But there are a lot of people out there who it seems like they haven't even really put their show together before they're doing their show. They haven't given it much thought, and they haven't really researched their topics, and you can tell that that person isn't professional. And I think that those people will get tired of doing it, because like you said, when you were doing 7 shows a week, it's tough. It's tough to do any kind of radio, TV production on a daily basis, be able to do your homework, do your research. And if you're not familiar with how to do those things, if you're not comfortable, if you haven't spent time actually doing some form of media, then I think that comes across in a person's podcast or radio show or YouTube channel. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos of people who kind of do the same thing.
So you mentioned earlier that you feel there's too many ghost experience shows out there. What's the difference then between asking for the experience, because a lot of researchers are now taking that experience and saying, yeah, it's great that you had an experience, thank you for sharing, but realistically they're doing nothing with the research or to help their research anymore. What's the difference between having that experience show compared to, say, having what we would call a disclosure type show on UFOs, or strictly a show on Dogman, or strictly a show on Bigfoot? What's the difference?
Well, I think the experience shows are just that. They're people telling their experience. And while that's important, it doesn't move things forward. If you're going to have, or if anybody's going to have a show and you're going to talk about an experience, let's bring in somebody that can analyze that experience, that can form an opinion and talk about the experience from an analytical, or I don't want to say scientific, but from a knowledgeable point of view. I've grown past the point of just wanting to hear story after story. I want to hear theories. I want to see somebody going out there and trying to prove something, trying to find something. It's great that a house is haunted. Now let's figure out how to measure that, how to figure out what's going on. Let's study it. I want to see, maybe I'm kind of an old school, kind of boring person, but as much as I want the story, I want the study too. I want to know what's going on with it.
Why is it so important to get that answer? Why is it so important for the listener who is taking their time to tune in to find out what the truth behind the experience is?
Because I think people are smart. There are a lot of smart people out there who have questions, and I think in some ways, the paranormal has always kind of been pushed aside, put down, minimalized by mainstream everything, media, science, anything. I think that people love to hear stories, but expect and want more. I mean, they want to know, the same things I do. That what's causing this? Why is this happening? Is somebody, is somebody haunted? Is something haunted? Why is a place haunted? They want more.
So when you listen to all these shows, okay, and they are talking UFOs, they're talking cryptids, they're talking paranormal, What is your opinion as a journalist when they start throwing in the word science?
Boy, that's a fine line. And I think it's the paranormal community's responsibility to decide how they want to deal with science. There has to be a fine line that both sides stay on. You're never going to get science to agree that a psychic is, absolute fact. But both science and the paranormal community can't keep throwing crap at each other. Everybody wants to put the other side down, and if somebody doesn't agree with this, then they're wrong, and nobody wants to have a discussion. I don't think the sciences, the mainstream sciences, are going to openly start to admit to being interested or talking about or open to possibilities about this stuff. But I think the paranormal community needs to kind of come to the sciences and say, how do we find a balance? What do we all need to do together to come up with some answers?
I fully agree with you on that, but I have a real problem, and I've stated it over the last couple months on this show. It was even part of my speech at the Paracon down in Washington State, that it's a very dangerous slope when we have people who are untrained, for the most part, not educated in a post-secondary way, not educated in science, using that term because the word science also comes along with fact, because you're trying to prove theory and turn it into fact. And when I see people who have no logical explanation trying to use the word "we do scientific research," to me, that's as bogus as the left wing or the right wing being part of the media. You're not doing anything scientific. All you're doing is you're running around playing with ghosts, you're grabbing tape, you're grabbing video, you're grabbing voices, and you are grabbing photographs, and you are literally having a time with ghosts. But there's nothing you are doing that is scientific. Because if you were doing something scientific, you would have the purpose, the procedure, the hypothesis, and the conclusion. That's grade 8 science.
Yeah, and you're completely correct. But I think that the mainstream sciences will never do this. It's not in any of their best interests to try and come up with some sort of middle ground. I think that people have to decide what they want to do with the evidence they collect. I mean, I bet on my computer I probably have a couple of thousand EVPs that have been emailed to me over the years. The people that collected those aren't really doing anything with them. I would love to start seeing, maybe not the mainstream academic sciences. I would like to see some of the technical sciences. I'd love to see an environmental engineer go on a ghost hunt, so that when somebody, whether it be a skeptic or a paranormal believer, says that, oh, that might be, maybe that's the ductwork expanding in the heat. I want somebody that can analyze that and say, you know what, that's probably not what that is. I would love to have a forensic audiologist and a forensic video analyst to start looking at these things and going, you know what, you can say it's this, but really this is unexplained. We don't know what this is. And I think you need to start, the paranormal community needs to start opening up and forgetting about all these, the skeptics and the hardcore sciences, and asking some people in those technical sciences to start getting involved and looking at this stuff.
I understand that, but the word is thrown around so freely. And I think it's a dangerous word to throw around, because we don't know what we're dealing with. We do not know what we are expecting to find. We have theories. But when you're throwing around the word science, which is basically figured out what most things in the world are today, you have to be careful with everything that you say. And I think the minute that we are throwing this word science into the fold, that's what makes the mainstream laugh at us. That's what makes the mainstream laugh at people who have been doing research on Bigfoot or doing research with UFOs or paranormal. But on the flip side, we're not holding, because there is no rules in this, we're not holding anyone accountable to what they are doing with their studies, with their evidence, with their sources that they hold dearly to them.
Oh, I completely agree. And that's why I would love to see some sort of peer review, and it will never happen because everybody thinks their investigation techniques are the best, and everybody, they have the best evidence. I would love to see a database or some sort of collective of all this different evidence that can be analyzed and have some people with some technical backgrounds look at it and analyze it and give their opinion on what it is. And maybe the more that is done, the more people will begin to accept that there could be things they don't understand going on. Now, having said that, there are a lot of people out there that shoot the paranormal field in the foot. There are a lot of people out there who put out hoaxes. They're really easy to do today. Everybody can do them on their phone. They put out fake news. They put out fake videos. They put out evidence that should not be put out. They make all kinds of assumptions. Going back to the media, I mean, there are shows where when they catch an EVP, or they say they've caught an EVP, if I'm watching it, I'm now in the habit of closing my eyes and listening to it. And 9 times out of 10, what I hear does not fit what they say and what they're promoting that they hear.
It's a slippery slope. And like I said at the Paracon, the loser in all of this, not as an derogatory term, but the loser in all of this is the listener. They are the ones who are dedicating their time, their energy, their quest for knowledge to these topics and these radio shows and YouTube videos and Facebook Live. And now, with all the disinformation that has been coming out the last 3 to 5 years, it's hard for anyone to disseminate what is real and what is fake. Because if you ask the majority of paranormal teams out there, and like I said at the conference, I know I've said that a number of times already, this is my average conversation behind the scenes that nobody hears. I will say to a paranormal group, they'll come up to me, and I get them probably 2, 3, 4 a month, asking if they could come on the show. And I'll say, yes, sure. Tell me about your group. Well, we're a team that does scientific research into the paranormal. Stop right there. You're not conducting a scientific research. So I'll say, well, what do you do with your evidence? Well, we collect it for our own, whatever they want to call it, our own research. Okay, what do you do after you collect it? Well, we put it into our files and try and figure out what is going on. Well, what do you do with your files? It's amazing, Everett, how many people cannot answer that question. And in terms of how it relates to the media, these are people who are going on there saying they are experts, that they've caught the ultimate EVP or the ultimate action of spirit. Yet these are the same people who are arguing with other teams, orbs are real, orbs are fake, orbs are dust, orbs are spirits. And how can you have credibility, especially on an alternative, a smaller alternative media side, if you can't even get people in your own genre to figure out what the hell you're doing?
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why somebody maybe like the Rhine Institute or somebody out there needs to begin to set up some sort of peer review or some sort of evidence analysis that's kind of third party, because I've seen a lot of stuff that people claim is the best they've ever caught, and it's the best anybody's ever going to see. And I look at it or I listen to it, and sometimes it's iffy at best. And if it's the best they've caught, then maybe they should change their investigation techniques or analyze their evidence more. But there needs to be something done with all of this besides store it on computers and share it with friends and put it on websites. I have to say, watching Ghost Hunters for, those many years, they had some instances where they caught some very interesting things. And I was always disappointed that they never had, with them being attached to Sci-Fi, they probably had the money. They could have had a program where they bring in some different fields, some different analysts, and go over a couple of years of evidence, some of these things that they've caught that were really very interesting, but got lost somehow in the show, and they're just never seen again.
Yes, but in the end, the show was just to prove a haunted place is haunted. It wasn't solving anything.
No, I can admit that after watching Ghost Hunters for 14 years, 12 years, I know no more about the paranormal from them than I would have having just wandered around an empty house with a camera.
I understand that, but the problem is if you get into the whole paranormal side now, and you see a lot of it, you hear a lot of it, if you're getting into that debate, that's how the majority of teams out there have learned, is by watching Ghost Hunters or watching Ghost Hunters International or whatever other shows are out there, and that's where they learn their techniques, because there's no education, no school for this. But they look at this as, maybe this is my last chance to get famous.
Yeah. And I think, wasn't it University of Edinburgh for a while? I don't know if they're still doing it. They had one of the few actually accredited courses, degrees offered in, and I hate the term. I despise the term parapsychology, but that's what it was. That's what they called it. But it was an actual accredited course in paranormal studies. I think today there are so many people out there offering their opinions as classes. They're offering courses. They're saying they're going to certify you, or they're going to give you a certificate, or, there's even some semi-unscrupulous, unaccredited colleges that will give you a degree in paranormal studies. But they're just offering you their opinion as coursework. You take their opinion as the rule. You pass their test. You pay your whatever it is a semester, and you have an unaccredited degree in paranormal studies.
So, getting back to the whole focus on the media here, how do we then create a genre of people who are searching for information with quality programming that they might be able to find out their answers? Because I know there's a lot of shows that I listen to, because I'm always looking for people to come under the Spaced Out Radio banner. So we do a lot of scouting here. Even though we don't have a network, we still want to help spread the word. And how do you usurp people from going with what they know to finding the quality of the broadcast, to make sure that they search and look for what is actually being told in a professional way?
Some of it, I think, is marketing. I think a lot of these podcasts and internet radio and YouTube channels, they don't know how to market themselves. Even the good ones. I mean, we can expect the amateur sort of broadcasters to not know how to market themselves. But the ones that are coming at it with a professional view and a knowledgeable view have to understand that as much as they may want to focus on just the paranormal, they have to look at the business side a little bit, and they have to get their name out there, whether that's through social media, whether that's through advertising. They need to, the quality shows need to make that investment in themselves and get their name out there.
Going to get to a question from Claudia on the SOR Space Traveler. She is asking, indigenous groups have proven time and time again they have used their gifts, which has taken scientists years to catch up and to prove. Seems the indigenous groups have always been the leaders, experiencing other dimensions, remote viewing, meeting the star nations, etc. It seems ceremonies invite the paranormal events, but in a sacred space with open-hearted actions. Do you agree with this, Everett?
Yeah, I do. My wife is part Cherokee, and her father, I've heard some legends and myths and stories. The thing about a lot of the indigenous people is that to outsiders, sometimes they're very tight-lipped. But I believe that, their whole, I don't want to say religion, but their belief systems and their ideas invite an openness to experiencing, to feeling, to seeing the different activities.
I totally agree. I do think, and I've said it many times on the show, I have no tie or background to anybody who is First Nations, besides a few friends. But I will say the biggest misconception, I think, especially in the paranormal field, whether it's the cryptid, whether it's UFOs, whether it's spirits, I think the biggest misconception we take as Caucasian people or non-indigenous people is that we refuse, for the most part, to listen to the elders and the ancestors and the stories and the legends that have been around for centuries. I think for most investigators, anybody who doesn't follow the claims of a First Nations person who has passed through the stories, I think we're doing a disservice. I really do. I think it's such a big part of this field that is so unequipped with knowledge that we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and that's where I guess the opinion versus fact comes in again.
Yeah, and I think that an openness and a genuine desire to understand and to know kind of opens your eyes and leads you to see things or notice things that you would miss, if you grew up in a very factual household, very straight line, down to earth, this point of view kind of household. I think you miss, you might miss a lot. I think that the Native American or Indigenous or First Nations people, they teach each other and they teach their younger generations to be open to whatever may be experienced. And when you're taught that, you look for things, you see things, you feel things that you might miss.
How many times have you listened to a radio show or watched a YouTube video or had people contact you saying, hey, we would love to do an interview with you, who are thinking that they are going to be the next television show or the next radio broadcast?
I've seen a lot. I've been contacted by a lot, and I usually turn them down. I'm not interested in becoming famous or making a ton of money off the paranormal. I have other interests that I do, but I would say that there are a lot of people out there, and I've been set up a couple of times where they want me to do this or they want me to come and talk about this, and it's simply because they want to criticize some point of view I have. So I typically turn them down.
But on the flip side, how many times have you heard it?
A lot. I couldn't tell you an exact number, but a lot.
So when you sit here and you watch these YouTube videos, because I think that's another important part to tonight's discussion, and you see all these different paranormal channels, ghost hunting videos, videos of experiences, videos of disinformation, the blurry Bigfoot videos, and literally there are probably 10,000 of those. Do you think that we are making people look foolish as they look into a camera? Do you think we're playing with people's minds, or do you think there's actually some good research to be found on YouTube?
I think there is some good research out there. I think there are some people out there who are genuinely looking at it with the right mindset, but maybe they don't have the tools or the background or the knowledge or experience to do it in maybe a more proficient way. But I think there are a lot of, as much as there is bad stuff out there, I think there is a lot of good stuff out there too. It's just sorting through to see, to find it. And you have to go through an awful lot of muck to kind of find the stuff that appeals to you, that shows you what you're looking for.
So when you are searching YouTube and you are searching for those videos that have some sort of quality content in it, and you see the channels, you see the subscriptions, you see everything that you are looking for, do you find that that is giving people more credibility or maybe a little bit less? Because YouTube seems to have this really weird genre where if there is anything of substance on it, it's usually absolutely decapitated by trolls in the comments section. So that way you actually know you have a good product going if the trolls hammer you. You get these people who are on there who are making thousands of dollars, if not more, per month because of the amount of hits they're getting for doing things stupid by, I don't know, like lighting off bottle rockets in their underpants or something along those lines. We've all seen those videos. I prefer watching old people fall. If I need a laugh, something about watching senior citizens try and get up on a table and dance at every wedding, and then the table collapses, to me, that is funny. Okay?
I'm going to remember that when you're a senior citizen.
Well, see, here's where I've got you beat already. My buddy and I, we wrote a contract a number of years ago that at 55 we're shutting down walking, because if they haven't invented a true hoverboard, not this crap on wheels that they are saying is a hoverboard, but a true hoverboard, I'm not doing it. I can't wait to get my scooter, man. Looking forward to it.
Oh, you're not going to be one of those people.
Oh yes, man. I'm gonna make that thing badass. I've got it all planned out. All planned out.
I have one I can send you. It's just sitting in our guest house. I took the battery out. If you want it, you can have it.
I may drive over there and come get it. I may do that. It's only, 2,800 miles? Oh, it can...
Yeah, give or take.
Give or take, 10 miles or something like that.
You know what? I'll put a battery in it, and I will start driving it next week. Well, wait till spring, because it only goes about 5 miles an hour.
I got to wait till the snow, my friend. I got to wait for the snow. But on a serious side, when you're going through the YouTube videos and you're seeing somebody who is processing good information, how can people decipher what is the good information and what is the bad? Because the reason why I ask that is a lot of people out there are using the free YouTube channel to try and get that set of eyes or maybe that demo tape made where maybe they can get it to a producer, maybe they can get it to a television network. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to build something for themselves.
I think it's hard to discern some of the quality. I mean, I've seen videos that have great production quality, but what they're filming, their evidence is sketchy. You have to wonder if it's a setup. But I've also seen videos that, boy, the people shouldn't be operating a camera, but all of a sudden, out of the corner, you see something very interesting, very intriguing. And I think it's ultimately up to the viewer to decide, like you said, we're not really doing science. So when somebody looks at one of these videos, I guess it's ultimately up to them to decide what they think of it. When I look at different videos, I kind of do a mix of, I want to see production quality that shows somebody's comfortable with and familiar with a camera. And I'm also looking for some story. I want to see that they know what they're hunting for, what they're looking for, what they're trying to show. And I want to see them catch it in a decent way. I don't want to see the back end of Bigfoot. I don't want to see 2 seconds of the butt of Bigfoot and then have somebody go, "Oh, did you see that? Oh, that was incredible. That was awesome." Because it wasn't. I want to see the full in focus, of course, Bigfoot. And the same thing with anything else, with strange lights, UFOs in the sky, ghosts. I want to see kind of a balance of all of those different qualities.
And I think the public does too. I think the public, though, for the most part, has troubles deciphering what is real and what is fake.
I would agree with that. And I think YouTube channels, now I don't subscribe to many because I go through so many different things, and I try not to favor anybody. But if I remember somebody, I'll go back and look at maybe their recent uploads and whatnot. I think YouTube is best used when it's in addition to some other form of media, whether it be an investigator who's a writer or an investigation team. If they're genuinely trying to make an impact.
My friend. Okay. Got to cut you off. We're going to go to a commercial here. We'll be right back with more from Everett Themer right after this.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with the UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Spaced Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. 2 hours down. Man, sometimes this show just flies by. Tomorrow night on the show, it is the SOR Roundtable. Yes, it's that time of the month. We are going to do another draw tomorrow night for our SOR Space Travelers. So make sure you listen in tomorrow night, because we do it the final Friday of every month. Thank you so much for listening in. If you are listening in on the Revolution radio station, the Double R Machine is a public station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has the password set for tonight. Diascuist. Diascuist is the password. He tried to trip me up on this one, but I think I got it. Diascuous. Don't ask me to use it in a sentence. Don't know what the hell it means. But if you're a space traveler, you know what to do with the nightly password. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn, or you can download this show or many others that we have on there, as we are now on iTunes as well. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you could join up for the SOR Space Travelers Club if you want to get into tomorrow night's draw. You can also listen to some great music as our guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot Fall, takes care of all music on the Space Out Radio side. You can read up on the SOR Space Wire, read up on our latest blogs, read up on the SOR Sightlines report. That's going to be a good one. So make sure you check it out today. Tonight we are talking paranormal alternative media with writer Everett Themer. He writes for Supernatural Magazine. Everett, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I want to get into the alternative media. And the big reason why I want to get into that is because we're used to the mainstream media not telling us the story. Especially we're seeing that a lot in the United States. We have seen the conspiracy theorists in the United States be proven true with the way this year's presidential election has been run and the lead up to it. People always said that it was rigged. Nobody wanted to believe it. Well, let's face it. It is on both the Democratic and Republican side. Then we look at some other fixtures. Voter fraud. We look at the media not reporting extremely important stories. Example, John Podesta and the whole alien topic that he will not get off of. And that's mainly the reason why he asked to join Hillary's campaign, was because she had to disclose. It's part of his contract. And the media's dropped the ball on that one. Now we look at the alternative side. We're used to the mainstream giving us the fear-mongering. Whether it's war, politics, violence in the streets of places like Chicago or New Orleans, Black Lives Matter, Police Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. We've seen it all, especially in 2016. And then you look at the alternative media, which was really turning out to be the true voice for the people, telling the true stories that the mainstream would not cover, shall we say. But in 2016 and in 2015, we've seen a lot of that, led by Alex Jones, all of a sudden change. We see a lot of fear-mongering out there. The world's going to end. The world's going to explode. We're going to collide with Nibiru. Okay, we've seen it all. What is your opinion, then, of the way the alternative media has changed over the last couple of years, where it's mainly focused on fear-mongering now?
I think there are a lot of people in the alternative media that they have their little bands of fans, and Alex Jones is a good prime example of it. He's pandering to the people that are going to follow him regardless of what he says. He's become his own story. And, you know, it's ironic that he goes about talking about all these conspiracy theories, And then I believe that he was actually sort of caught up in one with another guy trying to somehow influence Ted Cruz's reelection in the Senate next year. I don't know. I guess he would call it campaigning, but he kind of was doing his own little conspiracy theory to get Ted Cruz out of office.
I understand that. And I'll tell you, I was an Alex Jones fan. But there were two things that led me to this conclusion that he's no better now than what the mainstream is. When I was following him on Facebook, I would check in, and you know, if you check in with things every so often, they show up in your feed more rapidly, because that's the way it works now.
Right.
Okay. And the first one was this year's Super Bowl. And he comes on at about 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon and says, we have breaking news on the Super Bowl. This is about a few days before the big game. He goes, we have breaking news on the Super Bowl. InfoWars has found out who has won the 2016 Super Bowl. We know the winner. It's already been picked. You got to tune in a couple of hours. So he teases the audience on the conspiracy theory now that the Super Bowl is rigged. So, of course, like everybody else, I wanted to check it out. I want to say, okay, what did you learn? Okay, give me your sources. What did you learn? I go in there and he leads it up. The Super Bowl is rigged. You know, there's no point in watching the game. We already know who the winner is. And then he says, the winner is the owners and the sponsors. Duh!
Yeah.
Okay, the game isn't rigged. Okay? They haven't played the game. Why fear monger on the 250 million people in the United States who are going to watch that broadcast? Why fear monger and make things up? He did it again a few weeks later, if you recall the Powerball that went up to $1.3 billion. He did the exact same thing, saying we know who has won the Powerball before the draw has happened. You have to tune into InfoWars to find out what the answer to that is. So what they do is they go check it out. Okay, a couple hours later, he comes on and he says, the winner of the Powerball, the $1.3 billion, is the lottery corporations. No shit. Pardon my language. Okay.
But that's Alex Jones becoming part of his own story. I mean, he's kind of become clickbait.
Exactly.
In terms of internet. He creates his own stories to generate traffic to his website to generate ad revenue. I mean, there was a time when I followed Alex Jones too, and he had some interesting things to say. I don't know that I agreed with everything he ever said, but there was kind of, you could almost watch his de-evolution as his popularity grew. He seemed to start catering to a particular fan base, and what they wanted was to hear these exaggerated, over-the-top stories, and that's what he seems to be providing.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. But on the flip side, society is scared enough. Okay? They are petrified right now. They're petrified that their country is leading them into World War III. They are petrified of terrorism. They are petrified of gun laws, which in every other civilized country works. They are petrified of living. Okay? They're petrified of health care. They're petrified of being another statistic. And when I look at it, and here he is, and people like him out there who have the ability to do quality work, to help people get through their daily lives with an honest answer, instead what he has done for ratings, and his ratings are brutally high, and he's making millions of dollars off of this. Okay, his shtick now is making himself part of the story, as he did during the campaign when he interrupted a Young Turks broadcast, and then he started the riot or the big brawl in the protests during the Republican or one of Donald Trump's rallies. Okay, he's made himself part of the story, and he's started this fear-mongering campaign. And people, unfortunately, are so paranoid today, they are eating it up like a child eats licorice.
And at that point, doesn't he become just another corporation? I mean, how much of this is he doing not because he believes what he's saying, but to increase ad traffic?
Oh, I agree. I understand that, but it still does not regulate what he is doing. And what I mean by that is the sensationalism that he is causing and the hysteria that he is causing is only making the people who are paranoid afraid to walk out their door without carrying a machine gun, a handgun, a machete, pepper spray, and probably some Lynyrd Skynyrd music somewhere to get themselves pumped up. Okay, he is catering to the fear that people have. People are tired of being fearful. And the alternative media had the ability, Everett, to make sure that the story got out there. And all of a sudden, they've gone the exact same as mainstream. So how do we turn that back? How do we get those people back on track from living a scared life? Because the media has caused it.
I don't know if you can. I mean, there are people. Alex Jones has his devoted fan base. Every blog, website, they have their devotees, and they're going to follow those people regardless of what those media personalities say. It's unfortunate that we've come down to fear-mongering. I can't imagine spending all my time being afraid of almost everything. And, you know, the alternative media, a lot of it does play on that. But there is some good alternative media out there. Not everything is bad. The first time I heard about the Dakota Access Pipeline, big uproar here in the U.S. about that, I heard about it through alternative media. I had not heard a word about it on mainstream media. And then a radio host that I follow, he does a show on gardening, started posting these little things from an alternative website. And pretty soon I was pretty interested in this. So not all alternative media is bad, but I think people need to look past their own fears and understand that some of these things that a lot of these hosts and media personalities do is essentially to just generate more ad revenue and really boost them into the mainstream. I mean, Alex Jones really almost isn't, well, he's alternative because he's crazy, but he's almost mainstream except for the fact that a lot of shows don't want him on their show.
So how do you change that? How do you give the public the respect of the media back? Now, I will say this. I 100% agree with you. Social media has absolutely blown up the Dakota Pipeline protest in a good way. In a very good way. Because if it wasn't for Facebook Live, if it wasn't for social media, the videos that people are posting and the live hits people are doing, we wouldn't be seeing video of the tanks rolling in and the police arresting people who are peacefully protesting. We wouldn't see that.
And in many ways, in terms of the mainstream media, we're not seeing nearly as much as we probably should be.
So where do you draw the line as a reporter then between posting real situations like Dakota pipelines and posting the scare tactics that are happening on the alternative side.
I wouldn't call somebody like Alex Jones, and there's a bunch of them, I wouldn't call them reporters. They're not even really journalists anymore. They're more of a media personality that is going to go out there and feed on whatever fears they can. And the only way, I think, to change that is for the sites, that have broken things like the Dakota Access Pipeline. Those sites really need to make a push. I don't want to say to become mainstream, but to cover other sides of other stories and forget about fear-mongering and go back to real journalism. And I don't know if people are going to pay attention to that, though. I mean, people like, as much as they don't like to be scared, they like the sensationalism. Everybody, we've become a society of 24-hour news and what's going to happen next. And there are a lot of people out there that are just waiting for the next bad thing. And I don't think that you can change or convince those people to ignore the fear-mongering media.
I really like Love Energy's comment here. He says, in my opinion, Alex Jones is not a fear-monger so much as he is an anger-monger. What is your take on that?
I can agree with that. I think he definitely likes to stir people up. I think he's pretty angry about a lot of things. I'm not sure why. He's got a lot more money than I do. I can completely agree with that. And I think somewhere along the line, he has become, I don't want to say addicted to his own hype or his own promotion, but I believe that he believes himself.
But the problem is people are believing him.
Yeah. You're right. And what we need to do, what the alternative media needs to do, is begin to present counterpoints to its own alternative media. And again, that's not going to be exciting. That's not going to be sensationalized. Kind of like ghost hunting when they cram, and a night's investigation into an hour. They don't show all the boring parts. A lot of this stuff is not sensational or exciting or very interesting even at times. And I think people don't want that. They don't want to be uninterested in something. They don't want to see what they don't find exciting. And Alex Jones, and there are others, we don't have to just pick on him. He's a good one to pick on, but there are a lot of others that, they fill that need that people have. And the only thing we can do is try and educate people and show other alternatives.
But the problem is most people don't know where else to turn, because if they get turned off what Art Bell did, if they get turned off of what Alex Jones did or does, they become these orphans where I'm so enraged with what has happened on a personal level that my emotional commitment is now gone. How do you gain that trust back with the people who have been burnt?
I think through good journalism. It's not going to happen overnight. I think there are some websites out there that are trying to be alternative without trying to scare the world. Unfortunately, those are the ones that don't have a lot of ad traffic. They're not making a lot of money. And oftentimes maybe they don't last for very long. So then they disappear. And then you're left with, the fear-mongering again.
I get that. But where then can people find honest journalism? And as far as I know, the only alternative media, which kind of runs on the cusp of mainstream and alternative now, that seems to be telling real journalistic stories now, is the Huffington Post.
Yeah. I that would be a good source. I would agree. I think that if people are looking for information, if they're looking for other sources, the one thing they have to do is kind of actually put some effort into it. You can type in any search term online, and you can find 100 different sources, 100 different people that have written about that. If it's something important to you, you need to take the time and research it a little bit. Read some different point of views. I think part of the problem is that everybody just wants to have, their point of view. They don't want anybody else's, and they want to move forward with their thought, thinking, I know best. And they don't want to research the possibility of other points of view.
So then I'm going to hit you with a point-blank question here. What should be the role of the alternative media?
Today, I think the role of alternative media is to be brutally honest. We have so many, even news shows, mainstream corporate media, they avoid different things. Fox, all these different, they have such a skewed corporate point of view because they have to appease their advertisers and their sponsors. I think alternative media needs to just go back to being honest. It's not going to make people a ton of money. It's not going to make somebody rich and famous. But if there's enough people out there who are being honest and writing honestly about different points of view and positions and things that are happening, I think the stories will come out. And I think people will be able to find reliable places to find news.
I hope you're right. I really
I'm
do.
probably not.
No, I understand that. And you know what? I have argued this many a times. And to go back, and I'm going to say this because it's fresh on my mind with the Paracon, the one thing that I stated in my speech at the Paracon in Concrete, Washington last weekend was the fact that nobody wants to hear from the public anymore. The public does not seem to have a say in what goes on. And they're drowning. They are drowning with experiences. They are drowning in their opinions. They are drowning with trying to figure out what is going on. And here we are as a medium, far and few between, that is helping them bury themselves. We're the ones behind the microphones, behind the cameras, who are holding their heads underwater. And that's too bad because the public is supposed to know. To quote Marshall McLuhan, the message is the medium, and we're no longer providing the message.
I agree with that. I think part of the problem is, and there's nothing wrong with this, but part of the problem is that when you try and compete with, whether it be mainstream media or some of the more vocal and famous alternative media sites, you can't do it. Nobody can do it for free. And if you're putting out a website and you're spending time writing, article after article, or, there's a few people contributing and you're trying to get these messages across, well, eventually money comes into play. You can't do everything for free forever. And you may have the greatest intentions, the best voice, be knowledgeable, and honest. And if you're not making any money, if people aren't noticing the things that you're doing, eventually you have to walk away from it. And then that leaves you with, that leaves the public with the vocal fear-mongering media personalities that have the ad revenue behind their show to continue doing what they're doing and drown out the, I guess you would call it, true journalism, the ones that are just writing because it's what they know and what they feel.
I get that. And I really hope that the people out there can take the time to try and remember what truth is like. And there's a lot of people out there seeking the truth, and they just don't seem to have the time or the ability, because their life is so busy, to try and find that extra few moments to search for the truth.
But there are also a lot of people out there who just want to be spoon-fed what to think, and that's where those, bigger media personalities, both mainstream and alternative, that's where they fit the need. They fill the bill in that they can just tell these people, and people don't have to think, and they don't have to have personal responsibility for actually doing some research or becoming knowledgeable on a topic.
Mm-hmm. Fully agree with you. Fully agree with you on that. And I like Love Energy's point here. He says, don't blame people, blame the cause, not the symptom. So, in your opinion, what would the cause be? What should be blamed?
I guess, you're right. You can't entirely blame Alex Jones or any of these guys, but you can hold them to some personal responsibility. And if you're going to blame the cause, everybody's cause can be different. If somebody's out of work and they're struggling to make their house payment, and they are looking at Hillary and Trump, and their fear is, I need to find a job. Their cause is going to be different from the bitter, old man who didn't live the life that he wanted to. His cause is going to be different. So I don't know that really you can blame an umbrella cause. I think that for every person, what caused them to turn to this alternative media or turn to particular media personalities can be different.
Dawn brings up a good point. She says, I think the cause is the lack of work by the people. Research what you read. And then Love follows it up. A lack of compassion, which is whipped out of us, is in a trauma-based mind control torture chamber we laughably call schools.
I don't know. I had a great school experience. I think I'm pretty level-headed, open-minded. I never had any teachers that I absolutely despised. I can't really respond to that because I had a great school experience.
Where should people turn? Is it shows like this? Is it articles like what you write in Supernatural magazine? Where can people research to find the true faith that they should have in journalism?
I definitely think it's shows like yours. I think there's a lot of media out there that people can research. I think the key is to open yourself up to getting multiple points of view. I mean, it's easy to sit there and listen to somebody, especially if they have a good cadence, a good voice, good personality. If you listen to one person, you start to get basically ingrained with their thoughts and their beliefs. But if you're going to different sources, especially when it comes to, things like politics and what's going on in the world and that kind of thing, multiple sources. I mean, a mainstream news show isn't going to go on TV hearing or reporting something, having only heard it from one person. Normally they don't. They're getting random confirmation, multiple confirmation, getting information from other sources. Why are the news outlets and the news media the only ones that should be getting multiple opinions, multiple confirmations? People need to go out there and look at different points of view and see where they really fall in, what they really believe. And I think that a lot of people don't want to do that kind of work. They don't want to hear something they disagree with. They like to hear what they agree with. And that's all they want to hear.
Fully agree. We got a question from Claudia. She is asking, Everett, what is the most fascinating story you have ever covered?
I don't know if it was fascinating as more disturbing and interesting was the riots down by St. Louis in Ferguson, Missouri. Not at all paranormal or, alternative media kind of thing, but it was the most insightful, it affected me the most, I learned the most.
That had to be a powerful movement for you as a journalist to cover.
Yeah, it was. I saw a lot of hypocrisy. I saw a lot of people angry, but they were angry for the wrong reasons at the wrong people, and they didn't want to hear that they were wrong.
When you go into a situation like that, how do you try and hold your cover so that way you don't make yourself part of the story?
I work in primarily marketing, and I hate self-promotion, so it's really easy for me to kind of stay out of the story. I don't want to be part of the story. I don't want to be famous or even particularly well-known. I just want to do what I do, and that makes it really easy to stay out of the story.
We have talked a lot about paranormal radio, alternative media, television, YouTube videos, Facebook Live, but we haven't touched much on the print aspect of the alternative paranormal journalism. Is it just the same in its cutthroatness, in its brashness, in its ways where magazines are popping up like podcasts are, or is it something that is a little bit more refined and human?
I think it's a little bit more, the people involved in it have a little bit more experience in terms of how to run a magazine maybe than somebody who's doing a podcast or a website has in terms of doing something like that. But I don't think it's a cutthroat. I think the worst of it, and this will probably shoot myself in the foot, I think the big ones are the skeptic magazines. They're the ones that are primarily the most famous in print still. And I think that they are very cutthroat. They have an agenda that they want to promote. I think the paranormal print magazines are a little bit more fair and balanced maybe than some of the skeptic magazines. And I believe even in terms of some of the radio and online YouTube, that kind of thing, I think they balance things a little bit better. But I think that's because they have generally at least one editor or a couple of editors looking out for, the marketability of it. They don't necessarily want to alienate everybody all at once, whereas, somebody who's making a YouTube video and putting it up, they don't have an editor, they don't have advisors, they don't have anybody telling them, hey, maybe you need to tweak this or not do that kind of thing.
But there's also no borders that won't be crossed. I know when we were in the newsroom, we had to watch every story that we put out there to make sure that even though we were telling a story, we had to still be careful that we weren't going to get a lawsuit thrown at us. When it comes to the alternative side or the social media side, there's a lot of people out there who just don't seem to give a care whether or not a lawsuit is thrown at them or not. There's no fear.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think some of the bigger alternative media sites, they look forward to a lawsuit occasionally. It gets their name out there.
So looking at it then, if you were having the ability to direct people to where they needed to go, or what they should look for, or how they should spend their times, whether it's in the evening, whether it's on the internet, whether it's on radio, television, give me a play-by-play, and I'd like you to take some time on this because I want a real solid answer for my listeners. Give me a play-by-play of how you would direct people to find radio shows, television shows, print magazines that are guided towards not only them, but the truth as well.
Boy, that's a tough question. I think any person has to do research, and not every magazine, not every website, not every YouTube channel or radio show is going to fit every person. There are going to be people that look at a print magazine and go, I don't know what this is. And I think the key is people have to look at a lot of things. They have to kind of feel out what's for them and what they're looking for. If they're looking for news, political news, if they're looking for environmental news, the bottom line is they really have to take the time and do their research. There really isn't a roadmap. I can't say, well, look at, these YouTube channels for 10 minutes and then listen to some podcasts for an hour and then go read this magazine. It's kind of hard to do that because everybody's looking for something a little bit different. I don't know if that makes sense or not. I mean,
are people too finicky, though? Is the listener, the viewer, the reader too finicky? Because, let's face it, there are so many options out there right now, and this kind of takes us right back to where we started in hour number one in the first half hour. Okay? Are there too many choices for people to not pay attention? And what I mean by that is, let's say, for instance, I'm doing a show on Dogman. That's not going to interest people who are wanting to know about psychic ability or wanting to know about why or what can they do to get the ghost out of their house. And in turn, you lose listenership because they want to find that avenue of being able to get their question answered. And that's the tough part.
Well, I think then, in a way, you're right. People are looking for specific answers, and oftentimes they want to see their ideas or their answers validated. And that's where it comes into the producer of the magazine, the video. It comes into their hands, the radio show host, the podcaster, of making a connection with their audience. They have to somehow connect and get their audience to maybe not agree with them all the time, but make a connection that makes that listener, viewer, reader want to come back. And, I'm not always super interested in a lot of the things I read, but I read them because I have a connection somewhere along the line to what I'm reading. And I think it falls into the hands of whoever the media is to be open and honest about their views and what they're producing to make that connection with their audience.
Well, we can only hope that we can get everything back on track, and that starts with people such as yourself who are writing what we try and do here, and there's a lot of other good shows out there that we are trying to get together as one. What about all of this solidarity? There's a lot of people who talk in the field of paranormal unity. Should there almost be a media unity in regards to that, or is it way too far gone because there's way too many shows out there?
In terms of what kind of media? Are you talking like online websites, blogs? What do you mean?
Well, I'm talking about the whole gamut.
I think as soon as like alternative media sites start to unite, you face the whole kind of thing that this is sort of corporate and they're not speaking as individual voices. They're all one now. In terms of like paranormal, I don't think you'll ever get paranormal unity. I've heard that term thrown around a lot. I think there are too many people out there who are trying to be the star of their own show. They're not in it so much to advance anything. They're in it because they want to be the star. And I don't think you'll ever get that kind of unity. In terms of like websites and whatnot, there are some organizations where different websites have kind of aligned together, but then they kind of all have the same voice.
If you were to put together a top 10 or a top 5 list of what listeners or viewers should look for in quality, what would have to be on that list?
I think...
You don't even have to give a number on it. I'm just curious about your answer on that.
I think they need to look for somebody who can communicate both sides of a topic, of a story. I think they need to look for stories that aren't just fear-mongering. Let's go past yelling at each other and let's delve into some topics that maybe we can discuss. The willingness to have a discussion, I think that would be a great quality to look for. There are so many hosts and writers and YouTube people that just want to talk. They just want to tell their point of view. And I think that a outlet that has somebody willing to discuss both sides, whether they agree or disagree with somebody, but they can still have a discussion, I think that's important. I think somebody who can reach out and make a connection with the people that they're communicating to, that they're talking to, you can tell when somebody's genuinely interested in their audience. And I think that's a key. I think that would probably be the most important part.
Well, it's things like this that are going to get people paying attention. And that's why I wanted to do this show, because I think it's very important to help direct the people. Not that they're dumb. People aren't dumb. We've just forgotten how to pay attention. We've forgotten to ask questions. We've forgotten to question what is right and what is wrong for the most part. Now, I'm not saying so many of the people here, because the people who listen to a show like this, they're more so awake, but there is a majority of the community out there who doesn't believe they're being screwed, who doesn't believe that the media is lying to them on both sides of the border, who doesn't believe the government is screwing them over, or maybe they do, but they believe that there's nothing that they can do about it. And we have to rescue that attitude. And it should be the mantra for anyone who steps behind the microphone or the computer.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that there are a lot of people out there who are looking for answers. They're not finding the answers that they want, and they're getting tired of sorting through all of the garbage that they have to get through to find one legitimate answer.
Fully agree with you there. Joe says, part of the problem is it used to be that you had a handful of TV stations and maybe the local newspaper to give you your news. With the internet today, there are millions of sources that all claim to be telling the truth. It's the information that is overloaded.
I can understand that, but information is information. Whether you're getting the same information from 5 different sources or 50 different sources, I think where the problem comes is when that information gets corrupted and you have people starting to put their own turn on it, their own twist, put their own opinions into that information, and by the time it goes from one channel to the next channel to the next channel, the information has been corrupted.
Either way, it's a buyer beware type project out there. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Ron has a question for you. He says, in reality, what is the survivability of the truly honest? How long before they are consumed by the monster and lost?
Oh, there's, you have to walk a fine line between, honesty is great, and to survive, you have to make money. I mean, I don't make a dime off of my paranormal stuff, and I don't intend to. But I think that a lot of the people out there that are trying to do the news stuff, if they're going to be honest and they can't make money, then they're not going to survive very long. There has to be a way to get, some sort of revenue for what you're doing. And that's where, like we talked about Alex Jones, these sites pop up. Alex Jones is still there. The sites are gone. I think the one way that the survivability can be increased is if more people start looking for the truth. If more people start searching out what they're looking for, and people start visiting these websites, start visiting different media outlets, then those media outlets have an opportunity to at least make some money. It's when they're not making anything at all that they can't survive.
What do you think of all of the so-called radio networks that are out there? Some of them are very small. They claim to get 10,000 people an episode. There are some that claim to get 1 million people per day listening in. And yet they all have this pay-to-play attitude. They all have this, idea where we're going to charge our hosts. We're going to, sell advertising. It's all for us. In the end, do you believe that all these so-called networks out there are viable, are good sources of information?
I think they can be. I mean, you can't exactly fault somebody for trying to make money off of a radio network. I produce radio commercials, so I'm, fond of some radio. I think where it gets kind of ugly is when they start charging their hosts, like you said, and when they start fudging their numbers a little bit or a lot, I think that they kind of, I don't exactly know how to put this. I mean, they're walking a fine line in that they're a corporation and they're, basically already kind of misleading some people. They're kind of getting, revenue on both ends of the stream. And that can cause a lot of problems with credibility.
I know a guy who's a good friend of this show, Chuck Banks. He's an author. He's done some paranormal radio as well. He used to be on this network. They charged him, it was minimal, they charged him like $20 a month. They were telling him that he was getting 10 to 15,000 listeners per episode. When he finally found out the real numbers on that, his numbers were around 25 to 60 people per episode. And that's what I'm talking about.
I don't work with any people that do that. I don't know. I can understand why they're fudging his numbers to get his show. If he thinks he's growing his show, then they're going to keep paying him. But if they're only getting a little bit of money from him, I don't quite understand the idea or the reasoning behind doing that. And like we had said before, if one show goes away, another one's just going to pop up. So I can't justify why anybody would fudge their numbers.
To the people out there who may be looking to start their own podcast or YouTube channel, what advice would you give them?
Study journalism. If you're not going to go to school for it, at least listen to shows like yours. Maybe not agree with some of the mainstream media, but look at how they present it. Look at how, production values and how stories are written, and understand that, there is a sequence of events that leads up to making any kind of media, whether it be radio or YouTube. Don't just grab a camera or grab a microphone and jump into it without a plan.
I think that's very sage advice. We only got a couple minutes left with you here, about 3 minutes to be exact. So the person who is starting to set this up for themselves, what should be their goal? What should be their focus, most importantly?
Stay out of the story. Do it because you want to tell a story or tell somebody's story or move information forward. But don't do it because you want to be the story or be part of it or be famous or make a ton of money at it, because, in radio, and unless you're in the top, cream in each market, you're really not making a ton of money, and it's even harder online. And, you do hear the stories of these videos that get tons of hits and they start channels and they're selling advertising. But for every one of those, there's 1,000 out there that isn't being noticed.
I fully agree. We have just a couple minutes here left with you, Everett. I'm curious, where can people find Supernatural Magazine, and where can they get a hold of you in case they need to?
They can find Supernatural Magazine at supernaturalmagazine.com. It's based out of Britain. I can be found on Facebook. I have a Twitter account. It's Everett Themer, but I don't really use that. I don't know why. I'm not young enough to use that. But yeah, they can find me at Everett Themer, Facebook.com.
Excellent. You know what, my friend? That was a quick 3 hours. I'm really glad we had the opportunity to discuss this tonight.
It was awesome. I never went, when I started listening to your show, and when I talked to you about doing that little thing we did, I never intended on being on here at all. In fact, I think I even expressed some concern when we first talked about it.
Well, I don't mind at all. I don't mind at all. I think this was a good show. I think we opened up some people's eyes, and in the end, that is what we try and do here. Everett, you hold on. I got to wrap this thing up, man. If you're listening on the Spaced Out Radio side, you're hearing Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal playing in the background. Bumblefoot takes us in and out of every Spaced Out Radio show, as he is the official music of the mighty SOR. Tomorrow night we have the SOR Roundtable, which means it's time for another prize draw. Who will win after Bill Cardwell? Bill Cardwell won last month. The month before that was Gloria. Joe before that. It's going to be interesting. We'll have to see how it turns out tomorrow night. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time, we get going. If you want to listen to any of our archives, you could go to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. You could download us on TuneIn or download us on iTunes. It's always free. Go for it. Remember, we'll be back in 21 hours from now. It's going to be a good one. Do me a favor. Tell a friend what we are doing around here. That's how we're going to grow this thing, because of you, our awesome SOR audience. Love you all. Thank you for being so awesome in the chat rooms tonight. You did us well again. I clap for you. Have a good one. I will talk to you in 24 hours. Good night.